Welcome to the Actor's Side today. Oscar, Emmy, Grammy winner, Kate Winslet. You're just one Tony short of an EGOT, actually, as they say in the business.
As my 14-year-old son recently pointed out to me, I was like, why have you figured that one out? But yes, that has been pointed out to me.
You have a plethora of awards I didn't mention, from BAFTA to Golden Globes and things, and so many Oscars. I think you're still the youngest person to amass 6 nominations and then 7 nominations, and that keeps following you. But does that ever get old to you, to get that kind of recognition?
No. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. It still matters. I still care. It's still a huge thrill. It's still a gigantic honor. I think as I get older, I'm only more and more aware of just how tough it is to keep doing good work and to keep that bar as high as it should be, you know. And I love the job so much, and I love the experience of making films probably more than ever, I think. And I feel like I said that last year, and I feel like I probably said it the year before, but this year I feel like I really mean it. I don't know. It's such a blessing to do a job and be employed to do the thing that you love. I mean, it's you know, there are so few actors in the world who are employed to do what they love, and I just don't take any of it lightly at all. And so no, for me, it's still no. It will never get tired. None of it.
You were kind of born into it. You come from a family full of actors, right?
I do. Yeah. It's interesting actually, because I was doing something at SAG-AFTRA last night, and they were asking me about the organisation, my thoughts about the organisation and what they do for actors and so on. And I found myself talking about a kind of an aspect of my life that not many people know, which is that my dad's actually a disabled actor. And I just don't particularly talk about it that often. But he's disabled as a result of an accident he had when I was 11 years old. And so his career, that was very much a jobbing actor, never took off, largely because of his disability, actually entirely because of his disability. And so yes, I am from a family of actors, but I'm from a family of completely impoverished actors who were very much, you know, struggling to keep their equity card, because you have to have a certain number of days of work under your belt in order to be a member of the Actors Union in the UK. And so I suppose what I'm trying to say is I come from a long line of people who do it because they love it.
Yeah.
And so that for me has always been the greatest godsend of all, because I didn't learn anything really from anyone in my family by watching them in a movie or necessarily seeing them in lots and lots of plays. Yeah. I learned that, you know, getting an episode of a TV show and just playing, you know, the person who walked through and had 2 lines in the background, it was a job. Yeah. You know, so that was how I learned, and it was always very much, you know, making up plays and shows at home, and all of us, you know, choosing a character and fighting over a costume, and that was kind of how it was for me in my family. It was
you did that all through school. You were
yeah,
different plays and
yeah, lots of plays, lots of musicals, and I never imagined that it would be anything beyond that. I mean, I really didn't. You know, I remember thinking, well, films, that's something that Judy Garland did. And then I remember seeing Jodie Foster in Bugsy Malone and Taxi Driver, and it was only really in that moment that I thought, oh, so you can be a young person and be in films now. Wow, God, it just sort of hadn't really, I don't know, the penny hadn't particularly dropped. And then when I had an audition for a film when I was 17 years old, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, I'd never even held a film script in my hands, this thick thing. I mean, I remember thinking, God, how am I going to even read all of this? It's so thick, it's so much to read, you know, it's going to take me ages to read this. And that was Heavenly Creatures.
I was going to say, because you just came right out of the box, and with Peter Jackson directing, and that was such a good movie. So that was your first film.
Yeah.
And a very tough one, I would think. I mean, emotionally, I mean, that story and the character that you played, did you, were you method there, or did you like take it home with you, or did you find it hard to lose that
Well,
character?
you know, I was learning everything as I was going. You know, I'd never set foot on a movie set before. You know, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I felt as prepared as I could be. You know, I'd read all the old newspaper articles about that story because it's based on a true murder story. I'd read the diaries. Peter Jackson, you know, back in the day, I'd written him a letter, a handwritten letter, and I'd sent it by post to New Zealand. I'd really love to be prepared. Is there anything I can read? And he showed me just recently, he's actually kept the letter that I wrote to him saying, you know, I want to do some research. And so I'd done as much prep as I could, but nothing can prepare you, really. And nothing can prepare you actually for what it feels like to, you know, to go through that, as you say, traumatic experience of playing a character who had really existed, committed a terrible crime, and to harbour those awful, awful feelings. And it's actually something that I still feel I'm not very good at, actually. I think when I finished working on a film, I'm not very good at kind of almost deprogramming myself, kind of unpicking the stitches of the sweater that I've knitted. I'm not very good at that. And so I sort of carry all this baggage of the character around with me for a little while until I kind of figure out how to kind of, you know, push it away and find different sort of boxes to lock it up in. Yeah, I wish there was some education as to how you kind of deal with that, the traumatic side of it, because it can sometimes be a little bit like that. Especially it was like that with the reader as well, actually.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, and your second film, I think while you were doing Heavenly Creatures, sort of the opportunity came up for Sense and Sensibility, right? Or right around that.
It was about a year and a half later, when I was 19. Yeah. And Heavenly Creatures, because Heavenly Creatures actually took quite a while to come out. I mean, obviously in those days I had no idea about any of that stuff. Right. But I auditioned for Sense and Sensibility. And I remember Emma Thompson saying to me, "Oh yes, we've heard all about your film." And I thought, I'm in a film, and it's going to come out, and people are talking about it, and it was still so abstract to me. And she said, "Yes, no, Ang Lee has said, oh, there's a girl in this film, and we ought to meet her for your sister. So we're all very pleased that you're here." I'm thinking, I'm very pleased that I'm here. You know, I'm in this room with you fine people.
Yeah, that's great.
So, but where I was very lucky, you know, because often people say, you know, so do you think it's luck or do you think it's hard work? And I have to say, you know, of course it's hard work, but it's hard work when you're in it. And the real stroke of luck for me was that the first film I auditioned for, Heavenly Creatures, I got the part. Right. It happened to be Peter Jackson. It happened to be an incredible role. It happened to be a great script. It happened to be a film that became a sort of a cult classic. And that was the springboard for so much for me. And that was the biggest stroke of luck. Because, of course, you know, actors can knock around playing small supporting roles for years and things that go straight to video or never even see the light of day and become terribly disillusioned and lose all hope. And that's where I was very lucky, was that my first film happened to be a good one.
And Sense and Sensibility with Ang Lee, as you mentioned, Ang Lee. I mean, my gosh, to work with these directors right at the beginning of your career is a gift.
It's slightly ridiculous, actually. I mean, it's slightly that just doesn't happen. Yeah. And you know, now that I am older, and I do look at the last 25 years of my life, I can't even believe it's been 25 years and I'm still doing it. Wow. But those directors, you know, that's been just the best part, really, of all of it, because every director teaches you something new in the same way that every actor teaches you something new all the time. All the time. You have to be open to learning all the time.
Yeah, and then the interesting thing is then Titanic came along, and that's a whole other ballgame. Yes, I mean, that, I don't know. My question to that is, were you prepared to be that kind of star, to have that kind of thing happen in your career at that point?
No, I wasn't prepared for that at all. And I really didn't know. In fact, Leo and I were just talking about this the other day with somebody. We really had no idea what we were in. Mm-hmm. I mean, all I knew was that big films often were disasters and you know, box office flops, and people were just, you know, ready to kind of claw them down and rip them apart. So I just remember thinking, well, I've got to do a good job then, because you know, because the actors have got to be good, because if we're good, then hopefully no one will have a go at us, even if there's other things for them to pull apart. But none of us could have had any idea what was going to happen with that film. And in terms of sort of psychologically, emotionally, and all those things, in terms of stardom, I had no idea. I could not have been prepared for any of it. And it was really weird. I mean, it was very, very, very strange.
Who could have been prepared for that? That movie was #1 at the box office for 16 weeks or something, unheard of. And it just was that thing, and it still goes on. I mean, it's still, there's an emotional attachment people have to that, and obviously to you from that, I would imagine.
Yeah, they do. And you know, I met someone the other day who said, oh God, I remember, you know, I think Titanic was one of the first films I probably ever saw in a real movie theatre, and I was 13, and you know, this was a woman who was, you know, obviously not that much younger than me, and I'm going, my God. And then, and now for my children, you know, their friends, some of their friends are seeing it for the first time, or you know, saw it for the first time a few years ago, and it just lives on. It just keeps on going. It's the you know, it's the love that keeps on giving. It's
right.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
You're actually going to work with Jim Cameron again.
Yes,
now.
I am.
Avatar 2, my God.
I am, yeah.
Talk about big.
I know. So that, yeah, it's actually I had a couple of days with them this week, just being fitted up for my motion capture suit and learning a little bit of the ropes.
Is that something you've wanted to do, motion capture? Because it's an interesting process.
I tell you something. You know, one of the best things about acting is playing lots of different characters. And in lots of different forms, and I've never done motion capture. So when Jim asked me, I just thought, my God, it'd be amazing. And and in reality, actually, I only have around a month with all the key cast. It's not a gigantic role. It's a very pivotal role, but it isn't gigantic. So it should be a huge amount of fun, and all the other cast are just fantastic. And I loved the first film. I mean, I really did love it.
Yeah.
And
this is ambitious, since he's doing like 4 films in a row or something like that.
He is doing 4 films in a row. Yeah.
Crazy.
He's doing 2 and 3 pretty simultaneously, and then 4 and 5. I'm not sure if I'm sure they'll have a break in the middle. I mean, they've got to. Surely they've got to.
After Titanic, you had so many interesting career choices, I thought. I mean, really interesting, much smaller movies. They must have come to you and said, do this, do that, do that. And the choices you made were really terrific little movies that are not the obvious choices that you would make after that kind of a success.
Well, you know, Pete, I had to be really brave.
Yeah.
You know, I did have to be really brave, because it was a moment in time, and suddenly I was offered quite big films. I mean, suddenly a lot came my way quite quickly. And I mean, I can't even talk about the size of these paychecks. I just and I just remember thinking, I'm honestly not ready. I still don't feel like I know how to do this. Yeah. I don't know how to act properly. I need to learn more. I can't do it. I'm not ready for that. And also, I wasn't ready to be that famous. I didn't like that feeling. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I really didn't. And I knew that I wasn't prepared to fuel it. I didn't want to follow suit with something else nothing was going to top Titanic, nothing. Right. And I was just very lucky at the time. I had some very, very good friends around me who would just say, you've got to make sure that you're doing what is making you happy. And at the same time, it was, of course, very difficult to be turning down gigantic films, because I was so lucky to be asked to do them in the first place. Yeah. And I hadn't auditioned for those. I mean, my God, I couldn't believe that.
They just call you up, come and do it.
Yeah. And so it was, I mean, it sounds terribly sort of ungrateful, but I just knew that I needed to look after my desire to learn more. And also I wasn't very experienced. I needed to be out in the world, and some of the films that I was able to do after Titanic, like Hideous, Kinky, Holy Smoke, for example, they took me into the world. You know, they took me to Morocco, into the Medina and Marrakesh, and you know, off into the Flinders Ranges in the outback in Australia, and you know, so I was living a life that was my life and my choices, and not something that everyone else was saying to me. Are you crazy? What are you? You know, are you crazy? You've got to do this, and you have to do that, and you have to. I was like, well, I can't. I'm not ready.
Wow.
And it was I did have to be quite brave.
And you carried it on a lot. You mentioned The Reader, for which you won an Oscar. That year you also had Revolutionary Road. So you win 2 Golden Globes. No other actress gets a Golden Globe that night except Kate Winslet.
I know, that was pretty bizarre. Actually, that was, I mean, that's got to be, I think, probably the most shocking moment of my whole career. I had absolutely, because the thing is, up to that point, and what a lot of people don't know, but you and I do know, is that by the time the Golden Globes come around, there's been all these other little awards things and Critics' Choice, etc. Lots of other things. I was nowhere to be seen in any of those. None of it at all. Suddenly the Golden Globe comes around and I won them both. I mean, I felt really kind of embarrassed and quite bad for everyone else, to be honest. I was like, this is not really fair. This doesn't seem quite right. But it was, God, an extraordinary moment. Extraordinary moment.
It's amazing, to have those choices. I remember, and then they were shocked that you were nominated for Best Actress for The Reader, because you were supporting in the Globes on that.
That's right.
And lead. So it was all mixed up. But I think that supporting lead, it's the role.
It's the role. I mean, I don't know how any of that happens. I don't begin to try and understand the politics of all that stuff. But it turned out well. What can I say?